Hey everyone, so today I am going to swatch, unbox, and play around with the Faber Castell Watercolor Crayons. Good news is I'm old enough to use them. Well, at least by age. I don't know about maturity, but these are 15 watercolor crayons, which I think are, meant to go for children. But let's play with them anyways and see what they do. They are non-toxic, woohoo! But on the back of this little case, it has the colors, and then it actually talks about the crayons a little. So they're triangular. The watercolor paint is in the crayon. It includes a paintbrush. It says more pigment for richer colors. We'll see. No waxy buildup and washable, which is good to know. So when you pull it out, there is a little foamy piece here protecting the crayons. Get that out of the way for now. I probably won't use this brush, but ooh, that thing's seen better days. It's all like frayed and needs to be wet. I'm going to use just a water brush though. Let's pull out a crayon. So you can see the triangular shape. It's like a fat triangle though, but yeah, easier to hold. It looks like they have, let's get a color that it might show better on. Maybe this one. So if you see those little dotted lines right there, they coordinate with these little grooves, so you can peel that back and that way you expose crayon without having to do it manually. So that's kind of nice. So it says the Faber Castell and then the color name. And that's it on these. So what we're going to do is, I have a piece of paper here. Now I'm using my normal cardstock, but the reason for that is because I'm going to be, I normally use these for adult coloring. So I want to see how they would look with my cardstock. So like, for example, white, I'm going to do a dry and leave it dry. And then I'm going to create a little spot that I want to activate. But we'll do this with a color that you can actually see. So we got our salmon pink. And the only reason I want to see it dry is just kind of how does it feel, If I compare these to like Neo colors, these feel like a crayon. And not like Neo color, which is a water soluble crayon, but a little different. These like literally feel like a Crayola crayon. Not that there's anything wrong per se with that. So what I'm going to do is I'll speed it up while I swatch these and then activate them, and then we'll come back and chat about what we've seen, how they look, and all that fun stuff. Okay, so they have dissolved and whatnot. At first I was like, oh, these are gonna look ugly. And then as I got past the ochre, the colors got a little better. Vermilion didn't really want to activate too well here. As you can see, a couple others, you can still see how they really didn't activate all the way. The only one that really did was deep green, I would say, or yellow green. I got those swapped. That one probably dissolved the best aside from black, but black still has some residue left behind. However, I do have a coloring book here printed on watercolor paper. So I was going to see if I could test it out. Okay, so I'm testing it out on this paper just because this is a watercolor coloring book on the back of a page. So let's try the red. Let's try that black. And then let's try one of the colors that didn't really want to dissolve on my cardstock. Let's try the vermilion. And we'll even try the ochre because that one didn't dissolve as well either. And we'll just kind of see what they look like. So on watercolor paper, now this is if you dissolve them straight on your artwork or your adult coloring page. They actually are dissolving a lot better on this paper. Now this is not 100% cotton, so this is just a cold press watercolor paper, but not 100% cotton watercolor paper. So I think next I will try it on my Etcher sketchbook, which is 100% cotton and cold press. I don't have any hot press watercolor paper, but that's because I don't use hot pressed. So, but already I can see like these are dissolving and moving around a lot better on this paper. So that's good. Let's make sure. Alright, so let me grab my Etcher sketchbook. Ah, it took me a while to find a page. I didn't realize I was this far into my sketchbook. Okay, so I'm gonna go towards the back. So this is, like I said, oops, camera. This is 100% cotton, whereas the other cold pressed watercolor paper was not. So I'm going to see how well these dissolve, and also if they mix together. But this paper is a lot more absorbent than the other. Yep, so they're reacting exactly how I figured they would on 100% cotton. Okay, so because this is so, absorbent and it has the different texture than the other cold press. The other cold press has a ton of grooves, which gives you time to activate it before, activate and dissolve it. Whereas this one, it's leaving lines. Like you can clearly see my lines, or maybe you can't on camera, but I can in person. Like you can totally see the lines there on the cold pressed. Now that said, I can of course put this on a palette and just take it from the palette and put it onto my sketchbook. So it would work on these watercolor printed adult coloring books because they don't usually use 100% cotton. They use similar to the Fabriano sketchbooks, in my opinion. The paper is, but these are super cheap and honestly intended for children. Would be my wild and fancy guess there, especially because they're saying safe for 3+. I mean, they're very inexpensive. They do not have any light fast ratings. If they did, I would have to question that. But overall, I mean, if you're looking for a cheap watercolor crayon, I don't necessarily think I would recommend this one, simply because even though I'm doing this from an adult coloring perspective, the water solubility of these crayons is pretty poor. I mean, the only ones that really dissolve are yellow, black, red, this yellow green, and dark gray. Light blue does, but it still has a little bit of trace. But I mean, really, if you're going to use these in adult coloring books, then most of your coloring books, these are not going to dissolve on the paper. Now, you could put them on a palette, take it from the palette and put it right onto your page. That way you could use them. So if you're really on a tight budget, then I would recommend that. Only thing is you just need a palette or a cheap cutting board that has like a scratchy surface so you can get the crayon off. And then that way you can see, just pulling the pigment straight off of there. And that way you have a watercolor. Similar to all other watercolor crayons, you know, you sharpen this, save the shavings, because that's really product you're putting in the garbage if you don't. Unlike a normal watercolor pencil, where this is wood, so obviously I can't save the shavings. I'd have little wood bits in my watercolor. These could be shaved down and, you know, activated in a little half pan if you wanted. But I definitely don't think these would be great for going straight to paper. And that's what I buy watercolor crayons for. If I wanted to take something off of the palette, I would, you know, buy watercolors. And ones with better ratings and pigment information and all that. So if I'm looking at the watercolor crayon itself, I'm thinking, okay, will this save me time by letting me color onto a page and activate it? And these would not. So that's just my opinion, but there's nothing wrong with them. Just they wouldn't work with my style of how I use them. If you just want a good watercolor that you can throw on a palette and, you know, you want a cheap crayon, then these are definitely a great way to go. Especially because these are, like, you know, you can travel with these a lot more, and you're gonna have a ton more paint. Like, this whole crayon is basically paint, compared to buying like a little cheap set of watercolors. Also, even though they didn't dissolve well, they aren't chalky, so they're not leaving like a chalky after effect like a cheap watercolor would per se. So that's one thing to note as well. The colors are really pretty when they do actually activate. But like right here, vermilion, you know, kind of went, you know, flopped. Ochre kind of flopped. Salmon pink flopped, because they didn't dissolve the way they should have. But like yellow was like, wow. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I mean, I have other brands of watercolor crayons, so would I buy these over those, which include like my Lyras, my Neo Color 2s, my Mungyo pastels. These would definitely be a no for me, because I already have something that could definitely do what I want it to do and beat these out no matter what. So yeah, that's just my opinion. But you know, if you are new to watercolor crayons, then this set might be a one to start with, just because it's cheaper and you get 15 colors. That said, you're going to have to activate these on a palette and then bring them to your coloring books, because I mean, on 100% cotton, if you're using these for art, you're still going to want to activate them on a palette. Otherwise, you're going to have your lines. Now, if you want the lines in your artwork, well, then you saved yourself some hassle. But most people prefer not to have the lines showing, so just something to keep in mind. Not too bad though. I will probably give these to one of my kiddos that have been asking for some watercolor crayons, and they were still fun to test out and try, so that way I could tell you guys if these were better than some of the other budget ones. So yeah, that's just what I feel about these ones. Let me know if you have these and you've gotten different results, or the same. Or if there's another kind of watercolor crayon you would like me to check out, I definitely can do that. So until next time, take care. Bye now.